Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another Dokkan Battle animation analysis video. And ladies and gentlemen, we just got the animations about an hour-ish ago for the upcoming New Year's Wrath of the Dragon units. Obviously, this whole weekend I have been doing Wrath of the Dragon themed videos for animation analysis stuff leading up to the animation analysis videos for these two, of course, Super Saiyan 3 Goku and Hirudegan. I may actually post Hirudegan's video first, to be 100% honest with you, but I want to talk about Goku so bad, and I need to get this out of my system. Now, I've kind of given my time a little bit of, or I've given myself, rather, a little bit of time to relax. Oh boy, I'm already tripping over my words. I'm already still heated. To kind of simmer down a little bit, because, I'm gonna be honest with you. The title will already tell you this. If you've seen my, opinions on Twitter about it, you know I am not happy with how these animations turned out. I am not happy whatsoever. Super Saiyan 3 is one of my favorite forms. It was my favorite form basically until Gohan Beast came along, and obviously I still love Super Saiyan 3. And not to mention, this particular moment and scene from the movie has been one of my most anticipated units of all time. So, with that being said, obviously I care quite a bit about how these animations turned out. And let's go ahead and watch through them. As you can see, I have a plethora of tabs up here for some different reference material and some different talking points for some things that we're going to take a look at in these animations. So as per usual, we're going to watch through them one time full at regular speed, and then we will go through them in the slowdown as well. I always do like to mention I'm by no means an animation professional. I just look at Dokkan animations all the time, and obviously the funny assets that make them up, and I think I know what makes a good and a bad Dokkan animation. So let's go into it here. So Goku's very interesting, by the way, in just the way that he works, right? Because this is a unit that is like a normal unit that has a super attack, and then he has a standby, and he standbys into himself, where he is still Super Saiyan 3. He has an attack nullification, which is cool. I am glad that they included that, because obviously that was something from the movie that I definitely really wanted to see. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that he has a standby skill into himself. I was kind of thinking that it would work a little bit differently, basically. And not only that, but the Dragon Fist is actually only activated if he basically counters a super attack, which is really interesting. I was kind of thinking that it was going to be an active skill, but obviously, this is the way that they decided to do it. I don't really mind that that's the way that you activate it. I think it's kind of interesting, to be honest. But these are the animations. So, let's go ahead and go through these. Before we get into anything, I did want to note something interesting, that for the card art, right, for the regular card art, right, of the TUR, you can see that this is the art that they used as reference, and then for the transformed, obviously, it's just the Dragon Fist, right, so that's where the art came from, and I think that is interesting to note, because obviously with this, it's kind of interesting because, of course, it's always just sort of been a Dragon Fist art, whereas for this, obviously, it is a little bit different with the standby skill at play, right? So it's really interesting because, obviously, again, he has the active skill, which is, into the standby, right? And then it's the counter, basically, is the Dragon Fist. And then, of course, he has the regular super attack animation. So let's go ahead and go through and talk about these. I have plenty of tabs here with some different talking points about a bunch of different sections in these animations, of a bunch of different things that I wanted to discuss throughout the video. So, first of all, is my playback speed slow? It is. So let's start with the beginning. Obviously, we start with base form Goku here. I will say one thing that they definitely nailed that I can give them as a positive with these animations, considering I may or may not be about to rip and tear into these, is that I can say that the style of the movie is definitely captured here, for sure. Dokkan always does a pretty good job of that. But it is always something worth pointing out that definitely these do look very much so like the movie in the like stylistic, choice that they made, the quote unquote aesthetic, right? Definitely very Wrath of the Dragon-esque. Now, we have Goku stance up in base form. This is a very interesting animation here. So it cuts to this shot of Goku in the orange background here, right? With no real transition. It just cuts to this. We have Goku bring his arms back a little bit here before it just cuts back to him holding his hands backwards already, getting ready to do a Kamehameha, and then again jumping another pose, basically just 3 big pose changes into this. His arms look really weird there. I think it's just because this is supposed to be the muscle, but they look like elongated like that, and that's like a flesh flap. I don't know, that's a disgusting way to describe it, but that's kind of the optical illusion that is playing on my eyes right now. So the pose changes are kind of yucky, and this section. So we have this part with the transition between Super Saiyan 1, 2, and 3 for the super attack animation. Now, here's the thing about this animation, right? For one, I feel very conflicted about this because I think in concept, this is really cool, right? In concept to me, I like this. I think this aspect of going through the different forms is pretty cool, but it feels like it's executed kind of poorly. It just doesn't really feel like it has a lot of pizzazz. It doesn't really feel like it has a lot of pop. The individual characters, right, the individual forms, are not animated that bad. And even some of the transitions between them, right, like if we look at going from base form Goku here, right, obviously they have the glowing light sort of take over Goku here, kind of going over him first before them washing over the screen, and then they kind of flash the asset on screen there before then having Goku appear, which is pretty cool, right, again, and they sort of do the same thing for this, right, where they then have the Super Saiyan 2 asset appear there in the black and white before transitioning into this, and then I will say this is pretty cool, having the impact frame be the Dragon Fist before then the impact frame becomes Goku himself to the Dragon Fist again, and then obviously showing them both there on the screen. Goku moves his hands, which I feel like this looks a little bit stiff in terms of the arms, right? Before launching it. The blue does look really good. I do like how they blurred out Goku in the background, and they have the Kamehameha effect here. I think that does look pretty good, and you kind of don't see the energy anymore because it's almost like you're inside the energy. I do like that quite a bit. Now, here is the interesting thing about this. If you're kind of thinking, these look a little bit familiar when it comes to these arts, if you're somebody who looks at this type of thing constantly, or maybe you've seen this poster at your local anime store in your mall, because I swear I've seen this exact poster as a wall scroll before. What's really interesting is that somebody pointed this out on Twitter, where it's like they're 100% referencing promo art, and it is this, right? This poster of Goku's transformations here with the dragon in the background, right? This is quite literally every single one of these shots, right, that this person posted here, right? You can see, Super Saiyan 1, 2, 3, obviously the base form as well, is quite literally trying to reference this poster, which I will say, it's kind of weird, right? Because it's cool that they're referencing the promo art, but I swear they haven't done it like this blatantly obvious before. Like, it doesn't really feel like as much of like a super attack animation as it does like, oh, they just wanted to pay homage with a little bit of like a collage of showing pieces of art from the poster. That's kind of the feeling that I get from this, rather than it feeling like a more coherent transformation animation. And it doesn't help by the fact that for every form, they have him stop moving, right? I think if Goku was like fluidly moving throughout the whole time, like his arms were constantly moving the Kamehameha forward for this entire thing, instead of transforming, moving them forward a little bit, transforming, moving them forward a little bit, right? And transforming once again, I think this animation would feel a lot more coherent, but as it is, it just feels very jarring to me. And not to mention, I always appreciate them referencing art like this. But, I think most people agree that the Super Saiyan 2 art in this piece is not the greatest. Every time I've looked at this art, I always like the Super Saiyan 3 render. I think it's really good. I like the Super Saiyan 1 render. The base form render is okay, but I always thought that the Super Saiyan 2 render looked just like kind of weird, to be honest with you. So, I don't know. A piece of art that, you know, obviously it's official Dragon Ball art that isn't necessarily like a fan favorite. It's just kind of an interesting thing to reference here. And it is a little bit weird because you can tell that they even really tried to reference like the color scheme, and it kind of doesn't really fit with this whole thing at all, because this looks like a different style of asset, right? A different art style almost, this Goku and this Goku, to this one, right? And then it looks like a different art style to this one. This one looks a little bit similar to the Goku whose back was towards the camera. But the other interesting thing is that somebody pointed out too on Twitter, which this one is a little bit weird to explain because it's kind of like a yes and no sort of thing, that it's good and bad. Goku's hair is like the very, you know, very, very light yellow, almost teetering on white sort of hair, right? This is sort of the classic Super Saiyan hair color, right? And Super Saiyan 2 is typically depicted with a little bit more oranger hair in some pieces of art and in the anime. But it is very jarring, right? Seeing the hair go from that whiter hair to this, right? And again, it is like that on the piece of promo art. But then when we go from Super Saiyan 2 to 3 once again, right? It is again a different color of hair. Now it's more of the golden yellow. They basically had every single Super Saiyan hair color, like variation of the tints of yellow that they use on display here, right? And again, it's because it's referencing this original art, but again, it just feels very, very out of place in my opinion. Alright, so now we move on to the rest of the super attack. Bro, if I already have this much to say and we're not even 10 seconds into the video, oh man. Alright, so then we move on to here, where we have this shot from the back of Super Saiyan 3 Goku firing the Kamehameha at the enemy. The Kamehameha looks okay. It looks very basic. Honestly, I could have seen this super attack with these type of effects in animations from a couple of years ago, to be honest with you. This shot from the back, personally, I think they could do way better than this. It doesn't look terrible, but this looks like a super attack from a couple of years ago. This definitely does not look like a 2023 super attack. Like, if you took this back in time, right, and told me, hey, this is the next unit that's going to be coming out, Super Saiyan 3 Goku, for this specific sequence of animation, I would believe you, because this looks like a older super attack to me. It's just not up to snuff with current standards. This part is cool, though, I will say, with the Kamehameha kind of coming from the side, right, to hit the enemy. I do actually like this shot. I think it is pretty neat, but it is nothing too crazy. It's still just kind of cool looking. We have the Kamehameha effect kind of explode there from the ground, which is really interesting because it's like a blue cloud of dust, which I feel like usually when the Kamehameha explodes, it doesn't usually have that type of effect, but they chose it for this one. So I don't know, kind of interesting. This doesn't really feel like the proper explosion effect, but this could definitely be from the movie, but I also don't remember him firing a Kamehameha in Super Saiyan 3 in the movie. So I don't know. The other interesting thing I will say about this whole animation is, all things considered, it is incredibly short, right? Going from the base form Goku, right, to him stanced up, to the transformation animations being there, and then the card art and the Kamehameha. It's really, really short, and not to mention for how much they try and hype this up in the beginning with this Kamehameha about to be super crazy, right, with all of these different transformations at play here. The Kamehameha at the end is really weak. It does not really feel impactful. Not this one, obviously the one after the card art. It just doesn't really feel like it has a lot of oomph behind it, and it just feels like it kind of falls flat overall on the whole animation, to be honest with you. Moving past the Kamehameha, though, we now have the attack nullification, I believe. I'm just trying to get this correct. Yeah, nullify super attacks aimed at this character. So this was another animation that I did want them to include, right? When Goku's purposely taking hits from Hirudegan, obviously to then be able to hit, right? But I feel like they didn't include enough of this in here. They basically have the shot, Goku standing there, bam, fist comes in. By the way, interesting way that they decided to do the fist for this, because obviously this is kind of weird. Well, okay, so I guess this also maybe isn't a fist. It's just a weird thing because of how the Dokkan sprites work. And obviously when this shot was in the movie, this is of course a giant Hirudegan fist that is flying at Goku. So it kind of would be a little bit weird if they just had the sprite punch. Even for Hirudegan, he's obviously not scaled correctly in his sprite form compared to how all the other characters are. So it's just kind of interesting that they decided to go this route, but I definitely don't think it's a bad thing. I'd rather them do this, honestly. And not to mention, you could also just say that this could be a key-based super as well, and it's just kind of like white. But nothing too crazy. It is kind of interesting how, so I do like the hair moving, but the way that they kind of mask this, right, when Goku gets hit, they do have it transition from this to this, which I think is fine, right? It shows the kind of impact that is coming off of the fist. The motion lines, the impact frame, right, obviously to kind of imply Goku's about to move to the side, and then him getting hit away. They do sort of use that impact frame to kind of like not really need to animate a lot of other stuff that would maybe be in between that. Then we have Goku fall back a little bit, right? The hair moving and the clothes moving does look really, really good. Goku bringing his head up does look pretty good too, and obviously the facial expression looks pretty close to the anime. But that is really it for the attack nullification, besides the end part here. I will say, this is very jarring to me, this whole end section here, right? I do like how they at least have it so that Goku's face and kind of body angle stays the same-ish from obviously the previous shot, but they do some kind of yucky pose transition here, which I noticed right away when I was watching the animations, where when Goku's kind of bringing himself down, right, they immediately change to this pose, and then they just kind of have him go from bam to bam, which is a pretty big perspective shift, if I'm being honest, going from here to here, in my opinion. Let's take a look real quick at the original animation from the movie, because I did actually pull it up just for the sake of this video, right? If we go back to, so let's see, that it's right here, right? When Goku gets punched by Hirudegan, right? And then obviously, you know, the hit lands, and then of course he's like, right? The part after that is obviously when he catches the fist. So of course that section where he kind of goes down from the sky, right, is actually after that, right? You can see that it's here, right, when Hirudegan is roaring. Then you have Goku move down a little bit more fluidly than the Dokkan version for sure. But it's just kind of disappointing to me that they didn't include all of these different sections where Goku's kind of getting hit like this, or like this shot, right? Even the shot where he's like yelling at Trunks, they didn't include, right? But like this, right, when he just kind of gets the mollywop, he sort of gets it in Dokkan, but you know, this part where he catches the fist, right, would have been cool to include too. Obviously you have this section where he basically takes the fist with his cheek, right? That would have also been cool to include. I understand why they included just the part that they did, because with a lot of these animations where they want to do an attack nullification, they want to keep it quick and snappy so they can keep the gameplay moving, and usually they are pretty short animations, but it is kind of interesting that they still didn't include the second hit that Goku takes before he kind of flies down a little bit like this, and it's basically just the hit and then him flying down. Maybe it's just because they thought that they could kind of make it work with sort of the perspective of him still being in the same pose, you know, to then like move down a little bit. Maybe that's what they were thinking. But regardless, though, I feel like they could have just included a little bit more there for sure. I think the animation that is there is okay. Again, the pose changes for Goku at the end are still a little bit jarring for sure. I feel like they definitely could have made those a little bit fluid, but definitely a little bit of a nitpick, I suppose, on that part. Alright, so now we get to the standby skill. So this was what everybody was kind of assuming was going to be his intro animation. So it's very interesting. That just ended up being a standby. I apologize. I am so tired. I've not gotten enough sleep like this whole week. Or whole weekend and week, I guess. But we have Goku. Honestly, this is probably his best animation out of anything that is in here, right? This section where the buildings are exploding and the dust is going everywhere does look pretty good. And then we have Goku stand up in the clouds. It is crazy how we already saw the best animation in the preview. They showed us what they had. They showed us their best already, right? This section where Goku is talking, right, with the dust. And then obviously they just kind of zoom in on his face and he is thinking here. So obviously you don't hear the audio because, you know, I have the audio muted for the video. But, you know, he is talking to himself here, which is obviously why his mouth isn't moving. And they do have him move his head down. Now, again, if we look back at the movie footage, I will say, again, they did a super good job on this part because this is basically like exactly how it was in the movie. The interesting thing about this, I suppose, right, because this part is just like absolutely perfect. The Dokkan version looks exactly like how it looks in the anime. But of course, the anime version of this shot, right, is a little bit different because it's so much more close up. But that is also kind of a byproduct of the game being in this aspect ratio, because obviously then you get to see some stuff that you normally wouldn't have seen before. But this animation right here of Goku actually standing in the smoke looks fantastic. I don't think I could give this part enough praise. It is super simple, obviously, but it is really good. And I think it's also maybe only a little bit jarring going from this to then the zoom in shot with like the direct cut like that. Because obviously, like we were just looking at, right, there is a shot in between when that happens in the movie, right? Because obviously you have Goku powering up, and then Hirudegan flies forward, right? And then you have the close-up of Goku. So I'm sure that that is kind of why the Goku close-up, excuse me, feels a little bit like, not like a jump, because it's the same character, but it still feels like a little bit off, honestly. Nonetheless, though, we now move on to the Big Kahuna himself. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Dragon Fist animation. Now, keep in mind, right, this is a super attack counter, basically, that Goku has, right? If we take a look at Daresh's translations, right, you can see that great chance for the enemy's attacks, location of supers, you know, real, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So it is a very interesting animation. I can definitely say that. We have the funny cutting come in, and we then start off the animation with Goku standing there, right, with the anime-esque background, which is pretty cool. And I do like the way Goku looks here. However, the kind of pose changes that they do here really bug me. I think that this beginning part is okay, right? Because obviously when they're fading between the different shots, not only does it look pretty good and it still looks like the movie, but it is very anime-esque, right? It's that type of thing where it's like, oh my gosh, the anime character is flying ahead full speed, and you have these little like ba-choom, 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 you know, kind of like effects on it basically to, you know, represent like just the slow-mo effect sort of on it. But I will say, even though it is cool, I still think that personally, in the movie, it certainly looks a little bit better when it comes to that section, right? See, because obviously they reference this part where, you know, Goku has a little bit of like the fade effect, but not only is it not the same at the end, it's also just a little bit weird because obviously Goku jumps away here, but of course in the Dokkan version, he's like readying up to attack, basically. So it's just kind of interesting, the difference. But once that part is over, I will say I am certainly not a fan of the way that they did this particular section, right? The background, I guess, is okay, but Goku's face just looks a little bit off here to me. It doesn't look correct. And then we have Goku approach the screen, and once he finally gets up here, we have a very hefty just kind of dash forward where they basically just slide it across the screen until they cut to this right here, which is this close-up of Goku, it's just kind of jarring going from this, right, where they just kind of have him zoom across the screen to then the cut-in of the close-up of his face. It does not feel very coherent whatsoever, right? I talk about a lot in these animation analysis videos that I'm like, hey, if you're going to do a cut in your essay, you have to make it feel coherent, and I would say that this is certainly not a good example of this. This is definitely one where they feel like they are a little bit jank. And not to mention, right, Goku's face here is definitely a little bit off looking. I feel like certain frames it looks good and some it looks a little bit weird. And not to mention, they don't do a very good job of animating his head moving here, because a lot of the time they make it feel a lot more, I don't know, just lifelike and anime-esque, but you can clearly tell that this is just a PNG tilting to the side, which, I mean, obviously it is, but the goal is for it to not look like that, right? The goal is for it to look like one whole piece. And when it comes to this right here, right, the end section, I just think it's kind of weird they transition from this asset to this one, and then they have it just basically slide across the screen here, with the fist then going towards the screen. I also don't really like this transition, I'm going to be honest. I like what they were going for with the transition. I respect the attempts, but I do not think that they did a good enough job making this transition feel like it's impactful, I suppose, right? Because we go from Goku's fist here, right, to twisting and then being here. Now, this shot, I will say, like this still, that's what's so funny about this animation, is that I feel like there's a lot of still shots in here that look really good, right? There's a lot of stills in this animation set that look good if you're just pausing the game and taking a screenshot, which is fine, and obviously stills do make up animation. Obviously, you know, animation wouldn't exist without looking at a bunch of stills for 20 minutes. But that being said, obviously we are looking at this in full motion with obviously, you know, examining the stills in between. And this part, again, looks cool. I like the yellow glow that they have on Goku here, right? But when it comes to the explosion, that looks fine. But the dragon, oh man, oh man, oh man. This is a part that I really have a big problem with. So the dragon, like, fire and the dragon swirling just kind of fades in here, right? Around the clouds, basically. And you just have Shenron, or the Dragon Fist, just sort of slide in from the side, right? He glows a little bit. They basically just have him move across the screen. And then this, right? Where they have this asset quite literally just slide across the screen here, covering up the part with the swirl. Now, let's actually just look at this real quick. Two very interesting things, right, that I think is something interesting to bring up. So, the boy Wookie, right, made a very, very good point. Now, I don't know if I would necessarily use this word, and I won't because obviously demonetization, gang. But shout out to the boy Wookie. I am tired. I am so sorry, Wookie. But the dragon comes out of nowhere, right, like an afterthought of the punch. It just shows up. I completely agree with that. It quite literally just kind of feels like, oh, hey, we forgot to include him after making this animation. Let's just kind of have him come across the screen and make a cameo. It certainly feels like that to me. The way the Dragon Fist forms, right, in the actual anime looks so much better. It spins around like this. I completely agree with Wookie that it feels like it's missing that oomph of the dragon kind of spawning in through the fire, forming through these rings of fire and energy that are being, you know, twisted around in the tornado like this. I 100% agree. I think it's definitely lacking in that department. And, right, we'll get to my point in a second here. But Matt pointed out, shout out to the boy Matt, he also makes animation analysis content, so definitely go check him out. I'll, if I remember in my tired slumber state, Matt can remind me on Twitter in the comments if you're watching this video. Feel free to link your channel in the description because he makes good stuff too. But he pointed out that they used a asset from 2017. That's right. This particular Shinron asset right here is a 2017 asset where they have for this section where Shinron slides across the screen after kind of coming diagonally a little bit, right? They literally just have the light kind of cover him right there, they don't even really transition it. It's just like he's then yellow and then he appears. This asset right here is from a 2017 Dragon Fist asset. Now, here's the thing. I know what some of you might say. Well, of course they're going to reuse assets. They've done the Dragon Fist before, and it's something easy they can do. And, you know, it's saving resources and whatever. No. No. So, first of all, when it comes to this, the dragon does not have any of the great minimal movement that we have come to know and love on these animations, right? Shinron's hair ain't flapping in the wind. We've seen that happen before, right? I've seen that on other animations in the past. The whiskers ain't moving none. Nothing at all, right? And then, of course, when we get to this, of course, this isn't moving because this is just a PNG, right? Shinron's hair isn't moving here, right? The little whiskers ain't moving here. Nothing like that. If you are going to make an animation like this, right, and you're remaking something that you have made in the past and making it better as it should be, comparing to it being made like 5 years ago, it should look infinitely better, and you shouldn't be reusing assets. You should be redrawing this from the ground up and giving it something fresh and something original, not reusing this old type of assets here, giving us something new to look at, and not to mention just something even better animated, right, than something from 2017. A point that I made with this, right, is that here's the thing, right, and I've been seeing a lot of people gas up these animations on the timeline, saying a lot of people are like, oh, you're over exaggerating, that, you know, they're not that bad, or, you know, what have you. And here's the thing, right, this is the only stipulation that I am going to make to my point in this entire video, and I could bring it up at the end, but I'll just bring it up now because it's relevant. I just noticed also how Rudokon and Dragon Fist are trending. Interesting. I do know, and this is something to keep in mind when it comes to taking a look at New Year's units, right? New Year's units do have, a lot of the time, cut corners, or the animations don't look as good, or they're not as high quality, because obviously the team is working on the anniversary units, because of course the anniversary units are going to come out at the end of January, early February. So of course, right, they're spending their time making the big boy anniversary units look as good as possible. And what ends up happening sometimes is that the New Year's units get thrown to the wayside a little bit, right? That has happened in years past, right? It wasn't as much of the case with Gohan Beast and Orange Piccolo, right? I think some of Ultimate Gohan's animations maybe suffered a little bit because of that. Orange Piccolo's really not even any, to be honest with you, now that I really say that out loud. And Gohan Beast active skill, right, as much as we like to clown on the boy Gohan Least, obviously Gohan's active skill is like peak cinema, right? It literally just looks like they took it from the movie. But right, obviously that was kind of a special case because those were superhero units, and also those units were kind of cooking in the oven for a while. The movie got delayed. Kind of a separate thing, right? We're talking about the usual standard New Year's Dokkan Fest TURs, right? So that is certainly something to keep in mind when we are looking at New Year's units like this, that obviously, you know, they might not be as high quality as a normal Dokkan Fest in some cases because they're prepping for the Annie and they're putting the resources into that. However, with all of that being said, I think that this is something that needs to be said, and is something that should just not be ignored, and is something really important to think about for, you know, like, if you like the animations, that is completely fine, right? I like to say in these videos all the time that there are animations that I, from a technical standpoint, don't think are that good, right? Or I don't think that, you know, are very, like, high quality, I suppose, right? But I still enjoy them on a personal level, or like a fun level, right? I just think that they're fun to look at, or cool animations, right? Despite maybe from, you know, like my analytical brain looking at them, not thinking that they're as good, right? there are animations like that. And even if I don't like them, that shouldn't stop you from liking these. But let me be clear, right? Defending them, right? And maybe I'm getting a little bit into rant territory here, but defending them, in my mind, is just so incredibly silly, because literally the tweet that I've been trying to get to this entire time, right? Dokkan makes way too much money for any of this to be the case, right? The animation should not look this shoddy, and we haven't even got to the end of the animation yet. And of course, emphasizing my point here, they should not be using an asset from 2017 in a 2023 animation. Dokkan makes millions and millions and millions of dollars. They are an entire chunk of Bandai's revenue, which is insane to think about. If Dokkan kicked the bucket one day, Bandai would lose a really, really big chunk of their incoming revenue. And just not to mention, like, this is amounts of money that, like, aren't even fathomable, that, like, most people won't see in their entire life, right? So for the fact that they are making that much bread, and these animations are not up to snuff, or at least not better, or at least not using assets from 2017, Omatsu, Akatsuki, Bandai, whoever I am to blame for this, y'all make too much dough for this to be the case. Let's get back to the animation. I apologize for the side rant, but I still feel like it needed to be said. With that being said, though, we then have the section where the dragon, oh man, just bops into the enemy, basically. Basically just the straight asset of Shinron kind of knocking into the enemy there. I do like the little lighting effect that they have here, I will admit that. When Shinron knocks into them, right, they do have them glow, and they have this little green effect with the little kind of effect right there. That is pretty cool, right? I do like the Shinron kind of nods his head a little bit there. It is just, you know, two different, like, assets of the body that make his head look like that, where it's, like, all connected like that. But it's just kind of funny that it almost looks like he nods there. Nonetheless, though, obviously they have this long asset kind of fall through, and this is where they have the fire from the dragon kind of attempt to surround the enemy here like this. And it's really interesting the way they do it, because they kind of have the fire wrap around like this, right? Before they then have Shinron kind of appear next to the fire, doing the same thing in the background when they have the fire appear, and they have Shinron appear once more before covering the screen with more fire, and then they have the kind of fiery Shinron asset fade in and out with the regular Shinron, where he then kind of coils around the enemy like this, before having a little explosion effect here with, right, the basically like yellow lighting, right, coming off of him like that. And of course the little blue lights then following, which is a cool follow-up to obviously the scene that I'm sure that most of you are waiting for, where Goku is standing there right in front of the city. We were going so in-depth about this from the Tech Super Saiyan 3 Goku animations, right, that I was really hoping that this would look good. So let's see the end of this with obviously the sparkles and the desecrated city. Obviously the smoke looking very nice. This shot looking very anime-esque. That's it. Yup. So, before you start saying, huh? Where Goku at? Or I start going on another rant, I do want you to keep something else in mind when it comes to this animation. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about this shot in 1 second, but this is just something that I want you to keep in mind, right? Now, bear in mind my anger in the second half of this tweet, but the reason why I bring this tweet up is the first half, right? Because when it comes to the KO screen, there have been multiple times in the past where in these Dokkan Twitter preview videos, they do not show the KO screen. Why they don't show it in some previews and some they do, I don't know. For example, STR Future Gohan, right? In his preview for his animations, right? For his active skill, they showed the KO screen, right? Where he's kind of like breathing heavily at the end with his arms still stretched out, right? That is in the video. But there are other examples of animations where the KO screen just isn't there, and then when you watch the actual animation and you get the KO screen, it's there, and it wasn't there in the animation preview, which is just so strange that they wouldn't include it. And not to mention, obviously, this scene, right, at the very end, oops, that's wrong animation, at the very end, right, of this scene, obviously, this is such a big moment and such an iconic scene from the movie, right? It's part of the reason why people love this scene so much, right? Obviously, with Goku standing tall with his fist towards the sky, and then obviously this shot at the end with Goku smiling, right? Such an iconic shot, and I mean, heck, it's basically the entire identity of the tech Super Saiyan 3 LR. So, I am hoping, praying, that when we get the data download, that those assets are in there, and that the KO screen will be in there proper. If it is in there, I will probably make a follow-up video, whether it will be a full video or a YouTube short. I don't know. Because obviously I make these videos right the morning that these animations come out, and then I post them, you know, the subsequent day. And then of course the data download usually comes out after these. So I will be making a follow-up video if the KO screen is present. If I don't make a follow-up video, then you know there's no KO screen present, and I'm just sad. But with all of that being said, right, I do think that this section does look cool, right? Obviously, despite Super Saiyan 3 Goku not being present, I do like the presentation of the end of this. I'm just really hoping that the KO screen, you know, actually has that section, because that would be a huge redeemer for this card, I feel like. It would definitely be something that would really, like, take this unit's animations from being like, oh my gosh, these are extremely just the most disappointing thing of the year for me, to they're disappointing, but they're not as disappointing as they were 5 minutes ago. So hopefully they do include those, right? That is something that I am praying that they do. Now, the other thing I did want to pull up really quick before I give my final thoughts on these animations is the old head, the OG Tech Super Saiyan 3 Goku. Obviously, I did an animation analysis video on this guy over the last weekend, and obviously his animation has aged a lot. But the one thing that I just kind of want to point out about this guy's animation is I actually think that in terms of the Dragon Fist wrapping around the enemy, let me make that clear, that section, right, I think for especially the time that this came out, this sequence right there is better executed than the STR one. I don't know if that's a hot take or not. It might be. But this section right here with the circle of fire and Shinron coming in like, hey, what's going on, guys? And then going to here, right? And obviously just kind of bonking into the enemy, right? Before then, this shot is pretty cool. But then the wraparound here, right? It just doesn't feel like it has that same oomph that it does in the anime. Like, let's watch this Dragon Fist scene real quick right here, right? Where Goku throws the punch, right? And obviously, you have the dragon flashing forward, right? Where, of course, Hirudegan is so big that he ends up getting hit by the actual attack, right? So it goes through him. So, of course, right, they can't necessarily make it go through every enemy. And that's probably the reason why they have it kind of just bonk against the enemy to sort of represent it going through the enemy there. But obviously, after that happens, right, you then have that scene that they were trying to reference in the newer one, and of course this shot here with the dragon wrapping around, and it definitely seems like, did I spell, why did I put a Q in there, or a P actually, huh, interesting. They definitely are more akin to the anime in terms of trying to keep to the original reference material, like especially with the background. And obviously they can't get the angle exactly because, of course, again, the enemy sprite. But like the background is definitely a little bit more esque to the anime. But this one, right? And again, talking about this, like, it just has to be the KO screen, man. Again, like I said, it's basically this unit's entire identity is this particular shot. When it comes to just the way that for the time that the dragon was executed, right? I honestly think that the way that it kind of wraps around and surrounds the enemy feels more impactful and just looks better to me than the newer rendition of this, which is kind of crazy to think because obviously this is a very, very old Dokkan animation. I just wanted to get to it one more time here. yeah, this particular section right here, I feel like specifically is well done, is better done than this particular sequence of the Dragon Fist wrapping around the enemy. So final thoughts, right? Obviously, this is a unit that I have really been looking forward to for quite some time. This is a unit that I have wanted in Dokkan for so long. Like I've said many times, I am a huge Super Saiyan 3 Goku fan. So not only was I looking forward to it for that purpose, but also, you know, I really like Wrath of the Dragon, and I really like the Dragon Fist scene. So I was hoping that they would do it justice, and not to mention, obviously, right, doing justice to one of the, you know, just kind of a card that everybody in Dokkan loves, right? Classic Dokkan unit, the Tech Super Saiyan 3 Goku. And with these animations, not only do I feel like they are not doing Wrath of the Dragon justice, right? I feel like they're not doing the Dragon Fist scene justice. They're not even giving our old boy time to rest. My boy's back on the grind because he's on the chopping block for the better Dragon Fist, right? Again, there are certainly some things in here that, of course, look better, right? And there are aspects of this that certainly look cool. But I think overall, it's just very disappointing. The word that really comes to mind, as much as I always hate to use this word, is mid, right? And I hate using that word because of the connotation that it has when it comes to, you know, our modern day. But it's like these animations aren't terrible. They're not the worst thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. I still think that there's worse animations that have come out than this year, for sure. But they're definitely not only not good, but they're not as good as they could have been or as good as they should have been, in my opinion. Again, there's still shots in here that are good, like the scene right before this one. I think that looks really good. But again, one cut of animation in a set of animations does not make an entire unit look good. So in my eyes, this is a huge disappointment. I feel as though this is one of those moments where a unit gets shafted partially again because of just when they're coming out in the year, that there's a big celebration coming next. And again, the only thing is, like, man, Dokkan just makes so much money for these to not be that good, for these to not be that exciting, for these to not look as good as they could. I feel like there's no excuse in my eyes, right? It's so weird because this year I feel has been so inconsistent when it comes to the animations. There's some animations that I absolutely love and adore, and there's some animations that I've just absolutely despised, and it's shocking to me that they come out in the same year that some of the animations that are really good do. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I would be very curious to hear what you all have to say. Of course, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy. Let me know if you are going to be summoning on this unit on JP, or if you're going to be saving up for when these guys come out on Global. Of course, I will be taking a look at Hirudegarn, whether his video came out first or not, right? I know that I definitely have a little bit more positive things to say about him. So if you don't want me to be angry and disappointed and go on rants for an entire video, go watch the Hirudegarn video, because I will have a lot more positive things to say about him. But anyway, thank you guys for watching the video regardless. I always really appreciate your support, and I will catch you in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.